Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Rory. Since we're just about at the 10-minute point past our start time, I think it's time to get moving and stay on track. My name is Beth Hillman, and I'm the Provost and Academic Dean here at UC Hastings. It's my great pleasure on behalf of our Chancellor and Dean, Frank Wu, and the entire UC Hastings community to welcome you to this innovative symposium that's sponsored by the Hastings Law Journal. I'd like to start by thanking a few people. First, those of you who have worked on the Law Journal in recent months and years and whose ideas and labor has made this possible. I'd like to recognize Ben Buckwalter, the editor-in-chief, and Molly Jones, who had the vision. She's your symposium editor, who had the vision to bring this together. There are many others of you who've been critical to the development of this symposium, the idea, and all the individuals you brought together, and I'm grateful to you too. We also need to thank the folks here at Hastings who support our journals. Tom McCarthy at the O'Brien Center for Scholarly Publications makes a big difference in our ability to put on events like this and to offer MCLE. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Cooley, G-Gel, Morrison and Forster, Goodwin Procter, and Kirkland and Ellis. Did I get G-Gel right? Is that how you say that? Is anybody here? Is that right? All right. For making it possible for us to bring together so many top thinkers and actors and doers in this arena today. So the topic today is one that I actually tried to explain to my mom this morning and failed, which is partly because she was a little bit confused, which she is on occasion, but also because it's a little bit difficult to actually articulate exactly what this is. Because when we talk about 3D printing, it sounds as if it's something that constitutes printing, when in fact it constitutes a new way of production and manufacturing and distribution that has the potential to change the way things have been done in the past. The legal issues, as the conference of the symposium suggests, the legal dimension of 3D printing is something we're especially well equipped to address here at a law school, and that those of you who are working in the fields of law related to this are especially well equipped to engage on too. Regulatory issues, liability issues, questions of public health, questions of intellectual property, these and many more are all issues related to the very manufacturing and distribution process that you're focused on today. So this is an example. I have to give a pitch for legal education in general today. This is an example of the Legal Academy's ability to bring folks together, to talk about, to articulate, to anticipate, to propose some potential solutions, maybe even solve some of the problems that are down the road in a way that's separate from the most pressing issues that happen in the practice of law or in the actual production and manufacture of particular things. So I want to thank the UC Hastings faculty members who are a part of this today, Marcia Cohen, Rule Schiller, and Rory Little, and also the affiliates of the UC Hastings Institute for Innovation Law, created by Robin Feldman. We have Charles Bell and Brian Pascal also joining us today. Just a comment, because you all know a lot more about this topic than I do on what 3D printing is. This seems to me the sort of topic that engages us not only in thinking about the present and the future, but also in thinking about the past. This forces us to think about how things have been made in the past, how in fact they're made today, and how they might be made in the future. It's the kind of change that asks us to consider whether and how we might limit the proliferation of technology that could be transformative, innovative, disruptive, destructive, depending on the choices that we make with respect to its use. It cuts across fields as diverse as weapons procurement, medicine, transportation, and really manufacturing across the board. I hope that you'll walk away from today's discussions invigorated and engaged in trying to solve some of the problems that face us. And I hope that you'll realize you're helping UC Hastings create the individuals and the knowledge that will help us solve some of the problems that we've created, that we can imagine, and that we don't yet realize are coming on the horizon. So with that, I'd like to turn over the podium to Charles Bell, who is the Executive Director of the UC Hastings Privacy and Technology Project, part of our Institute for Innovation Law. Thank you, and welcome to Hastings.
Let's see if that, oh, great, perfect. Thank you, Dean Hillman, I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. My name is Charles Bell. I am the Executive Director of the Institute for Innovation Law and the Research Director for the Privacy and Technology Law here at the University of California, Hastings College of the Law. The Institute is a public interest academic center focused on the intersection of law, technology, and policy. We engage in academic research and education to encourage innovation through the practice and development of law and policy. My research specifically focuses on the interaction of policy and technology as it interacts with startups, specifically, an area that is exploding in 3D printing, so I'm incredibly excited to be here. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us, especially the panelists, the moderators, and the keynote speaker. I also want to thank the audience for coming and attending and starting this morning to participate in this fun event. I want to also thank the sponsors, as Dean Hillman already did, Cooley, GJEL, Goodwin, Procter, Kirkland, Ellis, and Morrison & Forrester for their support. I also want to take a special thank you to Professor Mark Lemley, who will be coming up and doing a special address later on, and to the organizers of the event, the Hastings Law Journal. Before I talk about today's topic, we have some house cleaning I've been asked to share. So first, Twitter. You can see it on the sides, I think, next to me. We are tweeting under the hashtag 3DLaw. You can follow us there, and you can send in questions. We are also live streaming the event at www.livestreaming.com/UC Hastings. In addition, this event will be archived and placed on the Hastings Law Journal website and on the Institute's website, which is innovation.uchastings.edu. Today's agenda will consist of 2 panels, a working lunch, and a keynote address. The first panel is regulating 3D printing, how to impose limits on the theoretically limitless. The working lunch will be presented by Cooley. There's a keynote address by Professor Mark Lemley. And then there is the last panel will be keeping guns off the streets by keeping them out of printers. For those of you seeking MCLE credit, lawyers must sign in and out and complete the MCLA survey. You can the sign-in and survey forms will be available at the registration table, which is back there. I think that's about it in all the details, but I think that covers just about everything else. With that said, I'd like to jump into a little bit of today's topic. As the MC for today's symposium, I want to take the opportunity to touch upon a few things before we get started. I work with law, technology, and policy, and I work with a lot of different audiences. And I've learned there can be a wide spectrum about the technology in particular. So with that said, I want to start by doing an overview of 3D printing to make sure we are all on the same page. I'll lay a base foundation. There are people here that can speak to it with much more expertise than I can. I want to discuss some general issues 3D printing has raised, and finally try to leave you with a few questions to keep in mind as you listen to the panels today. I love working at the intersection of law, technology, and policy because technology can change the world with its new opportunities that it creates. This is often driven by passionate innovators. Entrepreneurs are creative forces that pursue their passion, take risks, and try to change the world. But that can cause issues when government is seeking to regulate society, create stability, and minimize disruption. The internet ushered in an age of jurisdictional dysfunction for entrepreneurs to leap upon, if you will. Traditional concepts of national, state, and local boundaries are being constantly challenged. Information has become nearly ubiquitous in a digital form with no barrier or limitation. But this is a world that we all participate in and benefit from. 3D printing is an almost natural next step in this evolution as we enter an age that will revolutionize the manufacturing of physical products. 3D printing combines, or at least blurs, the physical and the digital. Now, 3D printing is not a century-old technology, but it's not entirely new either. We're dealing with technology that is almost, but not quite, at the mass market. This means 3D printing is here to stay. In fact, as it was already touched upon by Dean Hillman, it's already being used in biomedical devices, custom manufacturing, robotics, and even self-replication. I think this week they had an exoskeleton that they'd produced with 3D printing. To provide some shared foundation for our conversation today, 3D printing is the manufacturing of a solid 3-dimensional object based on a blueprint or digital model. I believe there's a working model here somewhere, in the back on the side. It'll be here at noon. For those new to the space, there are 2 key aspects I'd like you to keep in mind. First, objects are created using a digital blueprint or using a tool to scan an existing object. So imagine downloading a blueprint for a hammer or using a scanner to capture an existing hammer's image. This means that once an object is translated into ones and zeros, the blueprint can be shared at functionally no cost. Second, objects are built through an additive process, which means piles of material are laid down in different shapes on each other as opposed to cutting or drilling. This means the speed at which we can build objects is only going to increase over time. It's also important to appreciate how fast this space is moving. For instance, about a year ago, metal was still required to make a functioning gun, which is essentially no longer the case. But even at that time, we knew that reality was coming. Now we need to prepare for a world where unlimited access to information from the internet will soon merge with nearly unlimited ability to create material objects as well. This is incredibly exciting, but it can be incredibly frightening, especially for those that are charged with regulating society. The potential for society is mind-boggling. Massive gains in efficiency, empowering individuals and communities, and an explosion in creativity. But only experience is going to truly unveil the true impact of 3D printing on our society, which means we have to move forward with eyes wide open. Today's symposium is a step in our effort as a community to live up to the leadership that technology demands. The provocative issues are fairly clear. Gun control, for example. There are real concerns that anyone, convicts, mentally ill, kids, and so forth, will be able to manufacture their own guns once 3D printing is ubiquitous. Another area is intellectual property. To paraphrase one public interest think tank, only a small portion of the objects coming out of a 3D printer will actually be protected IP. Yet that same think tank expressed a real fear that existing IP regimes will be used to cripple the 3D printing industry before it has an opportunity to revolutionize our world. Another concern is that the plaintiff's bar will drive our approach as we react to questions around product liability. But today our focus is largely on regulators. How will regulators address these new challenges? How will they balance opportunity with safety? For instance, traditionally, the federal government has relied upon the commerce power to regulate the manufacture of commodities, an approach that relies upon regulating manufacturers as gatekeepers. But once 3D printing is ubiquitous and the individual is the manufacturer, this paradigm might be largely outdated. My hope is that this symposium contributes to a conversation that we must have today to nurture an industry that will revolutionize the world tomorrow if we don't accidentally destroy it because we allow ourselves to be led by our fears instead of our creativity. To conclude, I'd like to leave you with 3 questions to consider as you're listening to the panelists and the speakers today. 1, technology advances at an accelerating rate, but the law does not. What are new ways to think about rulemaking to accommodate for this difference? Are there existing regulatory models that we can actually pull from, even though it's not quite the same thing? 2, innovation, both technically and culturally, is critical for our future as a society. How can we bake innovation into regulation and regulatory rulemaking? And 3, 3D printing blurs the physical and digital world. And the reality is, this early generation technology is the canary in the coal mine. It's not the end game. So how can policymakers in society approach these advances with reason and foresight and not fear? So with that said, I want to thank you all for coming today, and we'll welcome our first panel.